It is scary and it's intimidating, and all women should be allowed to walk down the street in a safe and secure way and feel safe. And this is about that trust and confidence that women should have, that the spaces around them are safe and they can walk around. But the problem with this call to action, let's call it a call to action, is it enforceable? I agree with the sentiment behind prosecution for wolf whistling, sexual harassment, and touching, groping, and other forms of intimidation. But how practical is it to identify somebody who's just wolf whistled at you from a van that's speeding down the road? And we already know that police resources are at a very finite resource. There's only so many police officers to go around. So how do you actually enforce this? And it's a headline grabber, but is it doable?
It's probably completely undoable, Parm, if I'm completely honest. And your relationship with this kind of changes as it gets older, doesn't it? I'm sort of ashamed to say this, but I believe we should always be very honest in these conversations. When I was a teenager, and I have teenage girls, and I worry for them walking past certain, building sites or whatever it is, it was horrible to be whistled at and catcalled. It made you feel self-conscious. Now I'm a bit older when it happens. I sort of go, oh, OK, still got it. So, but we have to be really careful as older women to not negate the experiences of the younger women and how intimidating it can be. If this is not able to be implemented, Parm, in a legal, practical way, what should we tell our daughters? Do we tell them, turn a blind eye? Do we tell them, give them the finger back, which I sometimes used to do? I'm sorry. Do we say, you've got to call the police?
This behaviour is not acceptable in any way, shape or form. So it's not right to turn a blind eye. But what you've got to do is you've got to manage the expectations, because if you call police and you think somebody is going to be arrested and charged, you're going to go to court and say, oh, this is what happened. It's not going to happen. Let me just give you a statistic. 1.3% of rapes end up in a charge. And then when that person is charged, 42% of the victims will then withdraw their complaint because they will have been messed about, the dates will have been changed, and it takes 18 months to get to court. So being practical here and being real is important. It's not right to accept the behaviour. And yeah, you can report it to your neighbourhood officer, but don't expect a suspect to be charged, arrested. And if they are, you're going to have to go to court and give evidence against them. And your dates may be changed. It may take 2 years, 3 years. Are you really going to go to court for something that happened 2 or 3 years earlier? And that's where the practical side of it comes into it.
When you put it like that, you realise it's absolutely ridiculous that we're even talking about this being part of our legal system. If we can't prosecute men who are engaging in this act, which is actually one of power, isn't it? It's about intimidation and disrespect, actually, to women. I know I'm kind of joking about as you get older, it's quite nice to get a wolf whistle out of a van, but it is about disrespect. It's about belittling, particularly younger women. How do we change men, if we can't do it with the law, in order to make them realise that it is scary for young girls particularly to be intimidated on the street in this way?
Well, I'm pleased that we're having this conversation, because there will be men and women listening who will think, oh, it's not acceptable. And there may be somebody on a building site who just thinks it's a harmless bit of fun, who will be listening to our conversations. So the actual fact that it's a headline grabber, it promotes that conversation and it promotes changes in people. But I do think it's not just a woman's issue. It needs men to be having this conversation. And if you and I speaking today with your listeners can spark that conversation with male colleagues, male, people who work in shops, in building sites, anywhere at all, and they are going to have that conversation with younger men, older men, whoever it is, then that's a good thing. So the conversation itself is a very positive conversation, and it will go some way to creating those safer spaces for women to be able to enjoy their lives and not be in fear.
So let me talk to you, first of all, now, not as a former chief superintendent, but just as a woman, for any blokes who are listening to this. How does it feel when, I mean, I don't know whether, like me, you're a bit older, it doesn't bother us so much. But when you are younger, what does that feel like when you're walking down the road, particularly if it's a group of men and they whistle or they shout or they, you know, what's up, love, cheer up, it may never happen, you know, just explain to us how it feels, Parm.
Well, for me, it's embarrassment and it's shame that somebody is actually targeting you in that way. Because when you go to work or wherever you're going, you know, you see yourself as an equal, and it almost makes you wonder, do they not see me in that way? And I had an incident just a couple of years ago as I was going into work as a police officer. A couple of doors away from the police station, a man grabbed me from a building site and tried to dance with me in the street. I was absolutely embarrassed, didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't report it because I managed to deal with the situation myself, but not everybody can. So we do need to have those conversations. It's not right to turn a blind eye, but at the same time, we've got to be realistic about what we can actually do about it. And that's where the conversations and the positive messaging is really more important than anything that can be done through the criminal justice system.